I never thought I'd be that guy. You know, the one who becomes a statistic, whose life falls apart in a matter of days. I'm Joe Marshall, a real estate salesman, and I used to think I had it all. A decent job, a beautiful home, and most importantly, a loving wife, Sarah. Sarah worked at the local bank as a customer service representative. She was the kind of woman who lit up a room with her smile, and I always felt lucky to have her by my side. But life has a funny way of pulling the rug out from under you. It all started on a typical Monday morning. I was in my car, navigating through the usual traffic, sipping on my second cup of coffee of the day. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was a notification from the security app linked to the hidden cameras I had installed in our house a few months ago. Sarah and I had decided to get the cameras after a series of burglaries in the neighborhood. I never thought they'd capture something far more devastating. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just the cleaning lady, Mrs. Lopez, making her rounds. I'd check the footage later, I thought, not knowing that it would be the beginning of the end. Sarah had been coming home late recently, blaming it on the increased workload at the bank. She said they were short-staffed, and with the influx of new clients, everyone had to pull extra shifts. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? We had been married for 8 years, and she had never given me a reason to doubt her. Still, there was something different in her demeanor. She was more distracted. Her phone was glued to her hand, and she seemed to be texting someone constantly. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, saying it was just work-related. That Monday evening, I got home before Sarah. The house was eerily quiet. I sat on the couch, flicking through channels, but not really watching anything. My mind kept wandering back to the security notification. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled out my phone to check the footage. There it was. At 11:30 a.m., Sarah entered the house with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, and she looked happier than I had seen her in weeks. The man was tall, well-dressed, and had an air of confidence about him. My heart sank as I watched them move through the living room, their bodies too close for comfort. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This couldn't be happening. Not to us. The next day I called Sarah at work. She answered on the third ring, her voice cheerful as always. "Hey Joe, how's your day going?" she asked. "Busy as usual," I replied, trying to keep my tone casual. "How about you? How's work?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Lots of new clients, lots of paperwork," she said. "I might be home late again tonight. Don't wait up for me." I swallowed hard. "Okay, no problem. Just don't overwork yourself, all right?" She laughed softly. "I won't. See you later, babe." I hung up, my hand trembling. Something was definitely off, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. That evening, I decided to do a bit of sleuthing. I went through Sarah's social media looking for any signs of this mysterious man. There were no new friends, no tagged photos, nothing out of the ordinary. I felt a mix of relief and frustration. If she was hiding something, she was doing a damn good job of it. Then I remembered the hidden cameras. Maybe there was more footage that could give me some answers. I spent hours going through the recordings, fast-forwarding through the mundane moments. My patience was wearing thin when I finally hit the jackpot. There was more footage of Sarah and the same man. And this time, their interactions were far more intimate. They kissed. They laughed. They looked at each other with a tenderness that used to be reserved for me. My world crumbled. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed to be prepared. I copied the footage onto a USB drive and put it in my pocket. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why? I barely slept that night, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. By the time morning rolled around, I had a plan. I would wait for her to come home and then lay everything out on the table. The next evening, I got home early again. I made dinner, hoping to keep things as normal as possible. My heart pounded with anticipation. When Sarah finally walked through the door, she looked surprised to see me. "Hey, you're home early," she said, putting her purse down. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just thought we could have a nice dinner together." She smiled back, but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. We sat down to eat, making small talk about our days. I could barely taste the food, my mind focused on what was to come. After dinner, I suggested we watch a movie. She agreed, and we settled on the couch. I waited until we were halfway through the film before pausing it. There's something I need to talk to you about, I said, my voice trembling slightly. She looked at me, her expression wary. What is it? I took a deep breath, pulling out the USB drive. I found something on the security footage. Her face went pale. What do you mean? I plugged the USB into the TV and played the video. Her eyes widened as she watched herself with the other man. She tried to speak, but no words came out. What's going on, Sarah? I asked, my voice breaking. Who is he? She looked down, tears streaming down her face. Joe, I'm so sorry, I can explain. Her explanation was a tangled web of lies and half-truths. The man's name was Mark, a wealthy client who had come to open a bank account. She insisted that it was a mistake, a moment of weakness that meant nothing. But as I pressed her for more details, the story kept changing. It became clear that this was more than just a one-time thing. My heart shattered as she revealed that they had been seeing each other for months. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had loved and trusted for so long had been leading a double life, and I was left to pick up the pieces. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Sarah dropped a bombshell. She confessed that she had secrets from her past, things she had never told me about. I was stunned, struggling to process everything. What kind of secrets? I demanded, my anger boiling over. She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. Things I did when I was younger, things I'm not proud of. I didn't know what to believe anymore. The woman sitting in front of me was a stranger, and I was left questioning everything I thought I knew about her. As the night wore on, we talked and argued until we were both emotionally drained. Sarah begged for forgiveness, promising to end things with Mark and make things right. But the damage was done. The trust was shattered, and there was no going back. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to come to terms with my new reality. The woman I had built my life with had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. But one thing was clear. This was only the beginning of a long and painful journey, and I was determined to uncover all the secrets she had been hiding, no matter how deep I had to dig. The days following Sarah's confession were a blur of anger, sadness, and confusion. I had never felt so betrayed, so utterly devastated. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to rest until I got them. Sarah had moved into the guest room at my insistence. I couldn't bear to share a bed with her, not after what I had discovered. Our conversations were limited to the bare necessities, and the tension in the house was palpable. Every time I saw her, my heart ached with a mixture of love and hate. I decided to take a few days off work to clear my head and figure out my next steps. I needed to know more about Sarah's past, and I needed to confront Mark. But first, I needed to gather more information. One morning, after Sarah had left for work, I sat down at my computer and began my investigation. I started by searching for Mark. I had his full name and a rough idea of what he looked like, thanks to the security footage. It didn't take long to find him. Mark Peterson was a well-known businessman in our city. He owned several successful companies and was often featured in local news for his philanthropic efforts. His public persona was that of a charming, generous man. But I knew better now. I found his social media profiles and scrolled through them, looking for any connection to Sarah. There were no obvious links, no photos or comments that stood out. But then I noticed something curious. Mark frequently checked in at a coffee shop near Sarah's bank. I wondered if that was where they met. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Lopez, our cleaning lady. She greeted me with a warm smile, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Mr. Joe, are you all right?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine worry. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Not really, Mrs. Lopez. Things have been difficult." She nodded, setting down her cleaning supplies. "I'm sorry to hear that. If you need anything, just let me know." "Actually, there is something you might be able to help me with," I said, an idea forming in my mind. "Have you noticed anything unusual at the house recently? Anyone coming by when I'm not home?" Mrs. Lopez looked thoughtful. "Well, there was that one time. I saw a man here a few weeks ago. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now..." I felt a surge of anger. So it had been going on for even longer than I thought. What did he look like? He was tall, well-dressed, and had dark hair. "Very handsome," she said, her cheeks reddening slightly. It was definitely Mark. "Thank you, Mrs. Lopez. That helps a lot," I said, forcing a smile. As she went about her work, I returned to my computer, more determined than ever. I needed to confront Mark, but I had to be smart about it. I decided to visit the coffee shop where he frequently checked in. The next day, I drove to the coffee shop and took a seat by the window, nursing a cup of coffee as I kept an eye out for Mark. It didn't take long for him to show up. He walked in, greeted the barista like an old friend, and took a seat in the corner with a newspaper. I watched him for a while, trying to calm the rage bubbling inside me. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and walked over to his table. "Mark Peterson?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. He looked up, surprised. "Yes, that's me. Do we know each other?" I sat down across from him, leaning forward. "You don't know me, but you know my wife, Sarah Marshall." His eyes widened, and he set down the newspaper. "Joe, right? Look, I can explain." "No," I interrupted, my voice cold. "You're going to listen. You've been seeing my wife behind my back, and I want to know how it started." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm sorry, Joe. I never meant for this to happen. Sarah and I met here, at this coffee shop. We started talking, and one thing led to another." I clenched my fists under the table. "Why? What did she say about me?" "She said you were always busy with work, that you didn't pay attention to her anymore. She felt lonely," he said, avoiding my gaze. I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe I had been too focused on my job, but that didn't excuse her betrayal. "Did she tell you about her past?" I asked, my voice trembling. Mark looked confused. "What do you mean?" "She mentioned she had secrets, things she never told me about," I said, leaning closer. "Did she tell you anything?" He shook his head. "No, she never mentioned anything like that. We mostly talked about her work, her hobbies, that sort of thing." I sat back, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. If Mark didn't know, then I was back to square one. But at least now I had confirmation that Sarah's secrets were real. "I'm going to find out what she's hiding," I said, standing up. "And when I do, this will be over, for good." Mark looked up at me, regret etched on his face. "I'm sorry, Joe. Truly. If there's anything I can do to help." I shook my head. "You've done enough." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was going to uncover every last secret Sarah had kept from me, no matter how painful it might be. And when I did, there would be no going back. I spent the next few days combing through Sarah's old belongings, looking for anything that might give me a clue about her past. I found old photo albums, journals, and letters, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was as if she had scrubbed her past clean. Frustrated, I decided to confront her again. One evening, after she came home from work, I cornered her in the kitchen. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. She looked up from the salad she was preparing, her expression wary. "What is it, Joe?" "I want to know about your past, the secrets you mentioned. I need to know everything." She sighed, setting down the knife. "Joe, please. I told you it's nothing important." I slammed my hand on the counter, making her jump. "Don't lie to me, Sarah. I know you're hiding something, and I won't stop until I find out what it is." She looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. "All right, I'll tell you, but you're not going to like it." I crossed my arms, waiting. "When I was younger, I got involved with the wrong crowd," she began, her voice trembling. "I did things I'm not proud of. Drugs, petty theft, you name it. I was a mess. I thought I had left that life behind when I met you. But recently, some old friends from that time came back into my life. They needed help, and I felt obligated. I felt a mix of anger and pity. Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped you. I was scared, Joe. I didn't want you to see that side of me. I thought I could handle it on my own," she said, wiping away tears. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. "And Mark? Was he part of this?" "No," she said quickly. "Mark was just an escape. I know it was wrong, and I'm sorry, but it had nothing to do with my past." I stared at her, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. The woman I thought I knew had been hiding so much from me, but at least now I had some answers. "I need some time to think," I said, turning to leave the kitchen. I'll be staying with a friend for a few days. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Take all the time you need. As I packed a bag and drove to my friend Mike's house, I felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, and I could finally start to move forward. But the road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew there would be more challenges to come. When I arrived at Mike's place, he greeted me with a concerned look. "Joe, you all right? You look like hell." I sighed, dropping my bag on the floor. "It's been a rough few days. Can I crash here for a while?" "Of course, man. You know you're always welcome," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. We sat down in the living room, and I filled him in on everything that had happened. Mike listened quietly, nodding occasionally. "Sounds like you've been through the ringer," he said when I finished. "But at least you're getting to the bottom of it." "Yeah, but I don't know what to do next," I admitted. "Sarah's past is catching up with her, and I don't know if I can ever trust her again." Mike leaned back, thoughtful. "Maybe it's time to talk to someone who knows about this stuff. A lawyer, a therapist, someone who can give you some perspective." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "You're right. I need to talk to a professional. Thanks, Mike." "Anytime, Joe. You're not alone in this," he said, giving me a reassuring smile. The next day I made appointments with a lawyer and a therapist. It was time to start taking control of my life again, and I was determined to do whatever it took to move forward. As I sat in the therapist's office, pouring out my heart to a stranger, I felt a weight begin to lift off my shoulders. The therapist listened patiently, offering insights and advice that helped me see things more clearly. My session with the lawyer was equally enlightening. He explained my options, from legal separation to divorce, and helped me understand what to expect in the process. Armed with this new knowledge, I felt more confident about the future. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came my way. When I returned home, I found Sarah waiting for me in the living room. She looked anxious, her eyes red from crying. "Joe, I've been thinking about everything, and I want to make things right," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." I sighed, sitting down across from her. "Sarah, I appreciate that, but trust isn't something that can be easily repaired. It's going to take time, and I don't know if we can ever get back to where we were." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand, but I'm willing to try if you are." I looked at her, feeling a mix of love and sorrow. "I need time to think. We both do. Let's take things one day at a time and see where it leads us." As we sat there in silence, I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had a long way to go, but at least we were starting to move forward. The days turned into weeks, and Sarah and I lived in a state of limbo. I stayed at Mike's place most nights, but I visited home frequently to sort through my thoughts and belongings. Sarah was doing her best to make amends. She attended therapy, cut off contact with Mark, and tried to be as transparent as possible. But the chasm between us remained vast and deep. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I found myself back at the house. Sarah was sitting in the living room, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. It was a look of hope and desperation, a silent plea for forgiveness. I sat down across from her, determined to have a serious conversation about our future. "Sarah, I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my voice steady. "I've seen a lawyer and I've been talking to a therapist. I need to know, do you think there's any way we can rebuild what we had?" She looked down, her hands trembling. "I don't know, Joe. I want to believe we can, but I know I've broken your trust in ways that can't be easily fixed." I nodded, appreciating her honesty. "That's the thing, Sarah. Trust is the foundation of any relationship, and right now, ours is in ruins. I need more than just words. I need to see real, tangible changes." She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "What can I do to prove to you that I'm serious?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I don't know, Sarah. That's the problem. Every time I look at you, I see the woman I fell in love with, but I also see the woman who betrayed me. It's like I'm living with two different people." She wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. "I understand, Joe. I really do. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." I stood up, pacing the room. I need some time, Sarah. Time to figure out what I want and what's best for both of us. In the meantime, I think it's best if we continue living separately. She looked devastated but nodded. If that's what you need, Joe, I'll respect it. Just know that I love you, and I'm not giving up on us. With that, I left the house, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. This was going to be a long and painful journey, but I knew I needed to take it one step at a time. A few days later, I received a call from my lawyer. He had found some interesting information about Mark Peterson. Apparently, Mark had a history of questionable business dealings and had been involved in several lawsuits. It seemed his charming exterior hid a much darker side. I decided to dig deeper into Mark's background, hoping to find something that might explain his connection to Sarah. I spent hours online, sifting through articles and forums, piecing together a picture of the man who had upended my life. One evening, as I was going through some old files, I stumbled upon an old journal of Sarah's. It was from before we met, filled with entries from her college days. As I read through it, I began to see a side of her I had never known. The entries detailed her struggles with addiction, her turbulent relationships, and her efforts to rebuild her life. It was clear that she had come a long way since then, but the scars were still there. One entry, in particular, caught my eye. It was about a man named Greg, someone she had been deeply involved with during her darkest days. I decided to look up Greg, hoping to find some answers. It didn't take long to locate him on social media. He was living in another state, seemingly doing well for himself. I hesitated for a moment before sending him a message, explaining who I was and why I was reaching out. To my surprise, he responded quickly. He agreed to talk and even offered to meet up if I was ever in his area. I decided it was worth the trip, hoping that he might shed some light on Sarah's past and help me understand her better. A week later, I found myself sitting in a small cafe in Greg's town, waiting for him to arrive. When he walked in, I was struck by how different he looked from the photos in Sarah's journal. He seemed older, more worn down by life. "Joe, right?" he said, extending his hand. I shook it, offering a small smile. "Yeah, thanks for meeting with me." We sat down and I wasted no time getting to the point. "Greg, I need to know about your relationship with Sarah. She mentioned you in her journal, and I think understanding your past might help me understand her better." He sighed, looking down at his coffee. "Sarah and I were a mess back then. We got into a lot of trouble together, did things I'm not proud of, but we were in love, in our own messed up way." I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "She was always trying to escape her past, trying to be someone better, but the ghosts kept haunting her." "I guess they still do," he said, his voice filled with regret. "Did she ever mention anyone named Mark Peterson?" I asked, hoping for a connection. Greg frowned, thinking for a moment. "No, not that I recall. But there were a lot of people in and out of our lives back then. It's possible she knew him and just never mentioned it to me." I thanked Greg for his time and left the cafe, feeling more confused than ever. The pieces of the puzzle were there, but they weren't fitting together. I needed to confront Sarah again, but this time I needed to be more strategic. Back at Mike's place, I decided to set a plan in motion. I called Sarah and asked her to meet me at a park near our house. She agreed, sounding hopeful that we might be making progress. When we met at the park, I could see the anxiety in her eyes. She was desperate for some sign that things could go back to normal. But I wasn't ready to give her that yet. "Sarah, I need you to be completely honest with me," I said, my voice firm. "No more half-truths or evasions. I talked to Greg and I know about your past, but I need to understand how Mark fits into all of this." She looked taken aback but nodded. "All right, Joe. I'll tell you everything." She took a deep breath and began to explain. "Mark wasn't part of my past, but he became a part of my present in ways I never expected. When he came into the bank, we hit it off right away. He reminded me of the person I used to be, the person I was trying to escape, but there was something exciting about him, something that made me feel alive again." I listened, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I started seeing him because I was feeling lost, disconnected from you. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But it had nothing to do with my past. That's something I've been trying to keep separate, something I've been ashamed of. I nodded slowly, trying to process everything. Why didn't you tell me about Greg and your past struggles? I was scared, Joe. I didn't want you to see me as damaged or weak. I thought I could bury that part of my life and move on. But it's clear now that I can't do that, she said, tears streaming down her face. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Sarah, I appreciate your honesty, but the damage has been done. I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were. She nodded, her expression one of resignation. I understand. I just hope that someday you can forgive me. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of finality. The woman I had loved and trusted had betrayed me, but at least now I had some answers. The path forward was still unclear, but I knew one thing for certain. Our marriage would never be the same. Over the next few weeks, I focused on myself. I continued therapy, spent time with friends, and even started a new hobby, hiking. It was therapeutic, giving me a sense of peace and clarity that I desperately needed. One day, as I was hiking through a nearby trail, I received a call from Sarah. She sounded frantic, her voice shaking. Joe, I need your help. It's about Mark, she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. What happened? I asked, feeling a surge of anxiety. He's been harassing me, threatening to expose my past if I don't continue seeing him, she said, her voice trembling. I felt a wave of anger. All right, Sarah, I'll handle it. Just stay safe and don't engage with him. After hanging up, I contacted my lawyer and explained the situation. He advised me to gather as much evidence as possible and to file for a restraining order against Mark. I spent the next few days helping Sarah document everything, text messages, emails, and any other interactions with Mark. It was a painful process, but it brought us a sense of closure. We were no longer just dealing with the aftermath of an affair. We were confronting a real threat. Finally, with the evidence in hand, we filed for the restraining order. It was granted quickly, and Mark was legally barred from contacting Sarah. With that ordeal behind us, I knew it was time to make a decision about our future. I met with Sarah one last time, ready to lay everything on the table. Sarah, we've been through a lot these past few months, I began, my voice steady. And while I appreciate your efforts to make things right, I think it's clear that our marriage has been irreparably damaged. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I understand, Joe. I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to apologize for. I took a deep breath. I think it's best if we go our separate ways. We both deserve a chance to heal and move on. She nodded again, her expression one of acceptance. I agree. I want you to be happy, Joe, even if it's not with me. We hugged one last time, a bittersweet farewell to a chapter of our lives that had once been filled with love and happiness. As I walked away, I felt a sense of relief. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew I was on the path to healing. It was time to start a new chapter, one where I could find peace and rebuild my life. The divorce proceedings were straightforward, given our mutual agreement. We divided our assets without much contention, and soon, we were legally separated. It was a bittersweet moment. On one hand, I felt liberated from the constant pain and betrayal. On the other, I mourned the end of a significant chapter in my life. Mike was a pillar of support during this time. He constantly checked in on me, invited me out to social events, and even joined me on my hiking trips. I leaned on him heavily, and for that, I was grateful. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Mike and I sat in his living room, sharing a couple of beers. How are you holding up, Joe? He asked, looking at me with genuine concern. I shrugged, taking a swig of my beer. Some days are better than others. It's weird, you know? One moment I feel like I'm moving on, and the next, I'm hit by a wave of memories and regret. Mike nodded. That's normal. You went through a lot. Just take it one day at a time. Yeah, I muttered, staring at the floor. Easier said than done. Mike leaned forward, his expression serious. Have you thought about getting back out there? Dating, I mean. The thought had crossed my mind, but I wasn't sure if I was ready. I don't know, Mike. It feels too soon. There's no rush, he said, patting me on the shoulder. But when you're ready, just know that there are good people out there. Not everyone is like Sarah. I appreciated his optimism, but the thought of trusting someone new seemed daunting. Still, I knew I couldn't let my past dictate my future forever. A few weeks later, I decided to take a step towards reclaiming my life. I signed up for a local hiking club, hoping to meet new people and immerse myself in something positive. The first hike was scheduled for a Saturday morning, and I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. When I arrived at the trailhead, I was greeted by a group of friendly faces. The hike leader, a woman named Emily, introduced herself and welcomed me warmly. "Hi, Joe. We're glad to have you join us," she said with a bright smile. "Thanks, Emily. I'm looking forward to it," I replied, feeling a bit more at ease. As we set off on the trail, I found myself enjoying the camaraderie and the beauty of nature. It was refreshing to be surrounded by people who shared my interests. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. During a break, Emily struck up a conversation with me. She was a few years younger than me, with a passion for the outdoors and a contagious enthusiasm. "So, what got you into hiking?" she asked, taking a sip of water. I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "I guess I needed a change. It's been a tough year, and hiking helps clear my mind." She nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "I get that. Nature has a way of healing us. I'm glad you're here." As the hike continued, I found myself opening up to Emily. We talked about our favorite trails, shared stories about past adventures, and even laughed about some of our hiking mishaps. By the end of the hike, I felt a connection with her that I hadn't expected. Over the next few weeks, I continued to attend the hiking club's events. Emily and I grew closer, and I found myself looking forward to our conversations. She was kind, genuine, and had a way of making me feel at ease. One evening, after a particularly exhilarating hike, Emily and I decided to grab a bite to eat. We found a cozy little restaurant near the trail and settled into a booth. "This was a great hike," Emily said, smiling as she glanced at the menu. "I'm glad you suggested it." "Yeah, it was," I agreed, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I'm really enjoying these hikes with you." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. "Me too, Joe. It's been nice getting to know you." We ordered our food and continued talking, the conversation flowing effortlessly. As the night wore on, I felt a growing sense of affection for Emily. She was different from Sarah in so many ways, and I found myself drawn to her positivity and zest for life. After dinner, we walked back to our cars, the cool night air wrapping around us. We paused by Emily's car, and she turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Joe, I know you've been through a lot," she began, her voice gentle. "And I don't want to rush anything, but I really enjoy spending time with you." I felt a rush of emotions, my heart pounding in my chest. "I feel the same way, Emily. You're special." She smiled, a blush creeping into her cheeks. "So, would you like to go on a proper date sometime?" I grinned, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in months. "I'd love that." Our first date was simple but perfect. We went to a local art gallery, followed by a walk through the city park. We talked for hours, sharing our dreams, our fears, and our hopes for the future. It was refreshing to be with someone who made me feel alive again. As our relationship blossomed, I found myself healing in ways I hadn't thought possible. Emily was patient and understanding, never pushing me beyond my comfort zone. She accepted my past and helped me look towards the future with optimism. One evening, as we sat on a hill overlooking the city, I took her hand in mine. "Emily, I need to tell you something." She looked at me, her eyes filled with concern. "What is it, Joe?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've been carrying a lot of pain from my past, but being with you has shown me that it's possible to move forward. I just want you to know how much you mean to me." She squeezed my hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Joe, you mean a lot to me too. I'm here for you, no matter what." In that moment, I realized that while my past would always be a part of me, it didn't have to define my future. With Emily by my side, I felt a renewed sense of hope and the courage to face whatever came next. Our relationship continued to grow, and I found myself falling deeper in love with her. We took things slow, building a foundation of trust and understanding. It was a stark contrast to the whirlwind romance I had experienced with Sarah, and it felt right. One day, as we were hiking through a particularly scenic trail, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Joe, Have you thought about what you want for the future? I looked at her, feeling a sense of certainty I hadn't felt in a long time. I have, Emily, and I know that I want you to be a part of it. She smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. I want that too, Joe, more than anything. As we stood there, surrounded by the beauty of nature, I felt a profound sense of peace. The pain of the past had not disappeared, but it had transformed into a source of strength. I had found love again, and this time, I was determined to cherish and nurture it. Over the next few months, Emily and I made plans for the future. We talked about moving in together, traveling to new places, and building a life filled with love and adventure. It was a fresh start, a chance to create something beautiful from the ashes of my past. One evening, as we sat on the porch of our new home, watching the sunset, I turned to Emily, my heart full of gratitude. Thank you for everything, Emily. You've brought so much joy and hope into my life. She leaned in, kissing me softly. And you, Joe, have shown me the true meaning of love and resilience. I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that despite the pain and heartache I had endured, I had found something truly special. Emily was my new beginning, and together, we were ready to face whatever challenges life had in store. The happiness Emily and I found together was short-lived. Just when I thought my life was beginning to stabilize, Sarah re-entered the picture, shattering the fragile peace I had worked so hard it started with strange phone calls. At first, they were silent, but then the calls began to include heavy breathing or whispered words that I couldn't quite make out. I suspected it might be Sarah, but I wanted to believe she had moved on, just as I was trying to. One evening, after a particularly disturbing call, I turned to Emily, my concern evident on my face. Emily, I think it's Sarah. She's been calling me, but it's weird. It's like she's not saying anything, just listening. Emily frowned, her worry mirroring my own. Joe, that's really creepy. Have you confronted her about it? I haven't yet. I didn't want to stir up more drama, I admitted. Emily nodded, squeezing my hand reassuringly. Maybe it's time to address it directly. This can't go on. The next day, I decided to call Sarah. My heart raced as the phone rang, and when she answered, her voice was eerily calm. Hello, Joe, she said, as if she had been expecting my call. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Have you been calling me? There was a brief pause before she responded. I just wanted to hear your voice, Joe. I miss you. Her words sent a chill down my spine. Sarah, you need to stop. This isn't healthy for either of us. I've moved on and you need to as well. But Joe, I still love you, she said, her voice breaking. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can be a family again. I closed my eyes, trying to keep my anger in check. Sarah, it's over. We're divorced. I'm with someone else now. The line went silent for a moment, and then she whispered, We'll see about that. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. I began finding notes on my car windshield, messages written in a familiar handwriting. They ranged from pleas for forgiveness to angry rants. Sarah's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, and I didn't know how to handle it. One evening, as Emily and I returned from a hike, we found our front door ajar. My heart sank, and I motioned for Emily to stay behind me as I cautiously entered the house. Everything was in disarray, furniture overturned, picture frames shattered, and our belongings strewn across the floor. Sarah, I muttered under my breath, feeling a mix of fear and rage. We called the police, and when they arrived, I explained the situation. They took our statement and promised to keep an eye out, but I could tell they didn't think much would come of it. It was a domestic issue, and those were often difficult to manage. Emily was shaken, her usual composure replaced by a palpable anxiety. Joe, we can't live like this. She's dangerous. I know, I said, wrapping my arms around her. I'll get a restraining order. This has to stop. The restraining order was filed, but it did little to deter Sarah. She became more brazen, showing up at my workplace, sending threatening emails, and even accosting Emily in the parking lot of her job. Emily was terrified, and I was at my wit's end. One night, after a particularly disturbing encounter where Sarah had shown up outside our window, screaming and begging for me to come back to her, Emily broke down. Joe, I don't know how much more of this I can take, she sobbed, her body shaking. She's not going to stop until she gets what she wants, and I'm scared. I held her, feeling helpless. We'll figure this out, Emily. I promise. But promises weren't enough. Sarah's behavior was becoming increasingly unhinged, and it was clear she wasn't going to stop until something drastic happened. I decided to take matters into my own hands. The next day, I met with a private investigator. I needed to find out what was driving Sarah's obsession, and more importantly, I needed to protect Emily and myself from her escalating madness. The investigator, a burly man named Jack, listened to my story with a furrowed brow. Sounds like she's gone off the deep end. I'll see what I can dig up. A week later, Jack called me with news. Joe, you're not going to believe this. Sarah's been seeing a psychiatrist for months. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, but she's refused treatment. Her obsession with you has become the focus of her psychosis. My heart sank. What do we do? We get her committed, Jack said bluntly. But you'll need to get the authorities involved. It won't be easy. It wasn't easy. Convincing the authorities that Sarah was a danger to herself and others took time and evidence. But with Jack's help, we were able to build a strong case. One evening, as Sarah was pounding on our door screaming for me to come out, the police arrived with a psychiatric team. They restrained her and took her away, her screams echoing in the night. I watched, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over me. This was the woman I had once loved, reduced to a shell of her former self by her own mind. Emily hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her face. It's over, Joe. We're safe now. I nodded, holding her close. Yeah, it's over. The weeks that followed were a time of healing. Sarah was committed to a psychiatric facility, where she finally began receiving the treatment she so desperately needed. I visited her once, wanting to find some closure. When I saw her, she was calm, her eyes clear for the first time in months. Joe, she said softly. I'm so sorry. I know, Sarah, I replied, feeling a pang of sadness. I hope you get better. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Take care of yourself, Joe. And Emily, too. She's good for you. As I left the facility, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was time to move forward, truly and completely, without the shadows of the past hanging over me. Emily and I grew stronger through the ordeal. Our love deepened, forged in the fires of adversity. We continued to build our life together, knowing that we had faced the worst and come out stronger on the other side. And as the days turned into months, and the months into years, I learned to let go of the past, cherishing the present, and looking forward to a future filled with hope and love. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but it had led me to a place of peace. With Emily by my side, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger and more resilient than ever before.